and welcome to the Southern Star's Coronavirus Podcast. I'm the news editor, Siobhan Cronin.
And I'm reporter Kieran O'Mahony.
And each week on our podcast, we talk to the people at the centre of the COVID-19 pandemic in West Cork and beyond. We will also take a look at that week's newspaper and how our reporters are covering the pandemic and some other news too.
And this week also we'll have some new music from the West Cork-based COVID Collective, and they'll be singing the John Martin favourite, May You Never.
Great. And also in this week's podcast, I will be talking to Niall MacCarthy of Cork Airport about how the airport has reopened flights and the procedures they've put in place to cope with COVID-19 restrictions. But first, Kieran, let's take a look at this week's paper. And on page 1, I have a story which is co-bylined with Jackie Keogh about the tourists coming back to West Cork because since earlier this week, we've had the lifting of restrictions, so people could go beyond their own county. So I think it's been pretty well recognised that there have been quite a lot of non-C registered cars in the region, some non-Irish cars in the region. And so we're just saying how people are welcoming everybody back, but they're just being a little bit cautious. And unfortunately, the wearing of masks still isn't that common in West Cork when you compare it to, you know, the pictures of supermarkets in Dublin and other cities. So hopefully everything will go well. And then just added fears from some of the islands in West Cork, because with the exception of one, they have remained COVID free and want, you know, the onslaught of tourists, which they do get normally every year, to bring any infections with them. So I suppose that's just something to keep an eye on over the next few weeks. So, Kieran, there's also another story underneath that, very topical, on a national issue.
Yes, Martin Walsh has a great story there about Cork MacSherry welcoming the news that their sort of almost local boy, Micheál Martin, is the new Taoiseach. And there's a great picture there of Mary O'Neill in O'Neill's bar in Butlerstown, where Micheál is a regular, I suppose, during his holidays there. And the picture has a lovely, she has a pint ready for him, and there's a seat reserved with his name on it. And what's really cute about the picture is that you see that there's a sign saying that they don't have Wi-Fi and we just talk to each other.
Yeah, I'm sure now. Taoiseach on his holidays will be delighted to know that contactable in that one spot.
Exactly. And then it links to 2 pages then inside with commentary from local Fianna Fáil reps, people in Cork MacSherry, all, you know, welcoming his appointment and waiting for the celebration, hopefully during the summer when he does come back to Cork Mac. And I suppose it's about Micheál's wife Mary's family background, connections to the area as well.
Yeah, and I think since they met in college, she's been dragging him down to West Cork, and he's fallen in love with the place, and they have a holiday home here now. So, and there's some other stories. We've a 2-page special on the Taoiseach's election, including a nice piece from Mervyn O'Driscoll, who is the head of school at UCC School of History, just about the whole Civil War politics end of things, and, you know, the comments that Micheál made about putting the Michael Collins picture beside Dev, and that. So he takes a historian's view of what's been happening, and also some nostalgic pictures there of Micheál on holidays in Cork Mac over the years. Yeah. So moving on then from that, Kieran, there was an interesting story on page 2 that we have been covering about this plan for a nursing home in Drimoleague. And the story we had initially was that Irish Water were looking for in excess of 1 million to connect the nursing home to their local sewage treatment plant, which actually was only across the road from the proposed site. But the developer says, you know, that's just ridiculous money to connect. And he had a plan himself that he could provide his own facility for about 200,000. But now the council have come back and said they're not interested in him providing his own plant. So as a result of that, he has had to pull out of the deal entirely and pull the plug, appropriately enough, on the plant on the nursing home, because of the prohibitive cost of providing link to sewage. So that's a bit of a disappointment there for Drimoleague.
Definitely for Drimoleague, yeah. And actually on that same page there's a lovely story there by Helen Riddell that happened in Castletown Bear last weekend, where they had their first drive-in bingo. And like when things did go wrong, there was a power cut, but yet they persevered and they had a great night. And the winner or whoever got full house had to beat their horn, and it was all transmitted through the radio. But it was a great fundraising success.
Brilliant idea.
And
And I also
yeah,
noticed that a lot of the participants were much younger than you'd expect in the
yeah,
bingo nights. I think
exactly.
they're getting
Bing,
younger
maybe
people interested.
bingo's exactly, and they're going to be doing it again in July. And
Great.
also, it's worth noting that in Bandon there's one on this weekend as well, and it's been sold out. And that's the native St. Michael's Home in Bandon, so it's becoming the
Yeah.
new.
And there's actually
new
another one
thing.
during Kinsale. Well, there's a drive-in movie during Kinsale
Yeah, exactly.
Festival.
Yeah,
So the whole drive-in thing is becoming very
yeah,
big, becoming like mini America now in the in the
exactly. In the 50s.
all of a sudden. So another story that caught my eye was the story about Emma Hurley from Kinsale. She put a
Yeah,
really cool TikTok video up during the week of a song that has all the names of all the countries in the world in it, and she had put a split screen on the video, and one side was countries that Britain invaded and the other side was countries Britain hadn't invaded, and she jumps in between the two sides depending on the name of the
yeah.
country, and it's just very quirky. She loves history.
Very.
She's looking forward to maybe studying it after school, and she got 6.7 million
That's
million
crazy, like
views.
crazy. Yeah.
So she's a TikTok star as well as everything else. So that's a nice little story there
And she
from
works in
Mark.
her local Centra store, doesn't she?
She does, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a very
yeah,
quirky one. And
yeah.
I think you had a story below it then, Kieran, about the election of the Lord Mayor and Deputy
Oh,
or County Mayor and Deputy Mayor.
yeah. Last Friday, yeah. Independent councillor Mary Lynn Foley from Youghal, she was elected unopposed as the new county mayor, and she's only the third female mayor in the county, and
Oh,
probably the first female since 2012. So she spoke about how proud she was to be a female and taking the post. And our Skippereen's Joe Carlin was nominated deputy mayor unopposed. And councillors had a good, congratulated them, but they said that the pair of them will make a formidable team for sure
well,
in the
I suppose both
chamber.
sides of the county are well represented there
Exactly,
anyway,
yeah.
so it's
They
good.
made that point, the east and the
Yeah.
west.
Mm,
Yeah. And
good.
it's worth noting that there was no lunch there last Friday for the Hungry Press Pack because due to COVID-19 restrictions, so we had to go away hungry.
Oh gosh. Imagine enduring all that talk in a council
No, it
meeting
was
and no
not
food.
enough.
And another story there that has kind of links to the Star is the story of Emer Downing's wedding. Now, Emer is our editor's daughter, but she's been based in Bergamo for a few years as a teacher. And she had been planning a big family wedding. The Downings were all very excited this year about her wedding, but unfortunately, being based in Bergamo, she couldn't have any guests over from Ireland, and she had to have a virtual hen party. And she's written a lovely piece there about the wedding and
Yeah,
how they managed it, the small numbers at it. Everyone was wearing masks, including the celebrant. It was held in the City Hall in Bergamo. And it just happened then that within days of her filing that copy, she also found out that she had had COVID-19. So there's a little panel piece there about how she's found out in retrospect she had it. She doesn't know when she had it, but it was at some stage, probably in the early period
yeah,
of the whole COVID
yeah.
thing in Bergamo, because she thinks that she remembers having kind of hay fever, asthma kind of symptoms at the time. So she's not sure, but she has had the test. It has come back positive, and she has the antibodies as well. So just an interesting piece there for
Very,
anyone who
yeah.
thinks they may have had it to read about, how she went through that.
Exactly, yeah.
And a piece there, Kieran, on page 9 on Sister Alphonsus.
Oh yeah, Sister Alphonsus, she's a well-known speech and drama teacher from Bandon, but just a piece there about how, she has survived two pandemics, the Spanish flu in 1918 and now the COVID. And it's an interesting piece from her friend Esther Siddis, who told me about how when she was a child during the Spanish flu that her mother would rub Jay's fluid on her stomach, and I think that probably saved her from the Spanish flu.
Well, of course we
And
can't. We
weekend
a
for
bit like Trump and
I don't
and
know
his
that.
various bleach theories. We
Comments.
better be
Yeah.
careful that we're not suggesting taking
Suggested that you
steroids.
do. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
sure,
But she wrote a lovely poem actually, well, about the virus, and Councillor Gillian Cochran read it out at a recent Ballykinsale Municipal District meeting, and it was just a nice touch to, how she felt like during the or during the COVID crisis.
And what age is Sister
She,
Alphonsus?
oh, sorry, she's 103. She's
Exactly.
remarkable, and she's up to recent years. She's been still producing the Good Friday Passion drama in
Yeah.
St Patrick's Church in London. Yeah, so she's a
Brilliant.
formidable lady.
She sure is. So some other stories then just to watch out for in the paper this week. Our political columnist Archon, of course, is having a look at the new government formation, taking a few swipes at the various parties there, particularly the Greens. And also our property page, which is always very, very popular, has a lovely house in Collar Road in Skull, which is I think one of the must-have addresses in West Cork, and a beautiful property for sale there. And also in the second section on the Skibbereen page, which is our scene and third page, there's a really nice story about an olive tree and an edible roundabout in Skibbereen. So read all about that there. So thank you, Kieran. And don't forget, if you can't get to the shops, you can subscribe online by going to thesouthernstarTV and clicking on the e-paper tab, or call the office on 028 21200 for a postal copy to be sent to you. Niall MacCarthy is the Managing Director of Cork Airport since 2012, having come from its parent, the Dublin Airports Authority. An accountant by profession, he is now presiding over Ireland's second busiest airport at one of the most challenging times for aviation in the industry's history. I spoke to him earlier. So thank you for joining me, Niall, and you're joined today also by Kevin Cullinane, who's Head of Communications at Cork Airport. So welcome, gentlemen. So Niall, how are things settling down at Cork Airport this week now? Since the start of the week, we've had a lot of flights back in the air.
So we were open throughout the pandemic. People don't realise that. We had 2 flights a day generally, one to Stansted, one to Heathrow, that were providing vital connectivity and the only connectivity into the region. We also had air support, with a lot of air core traffic, a lot of air sea rescue traffic, Coast Guard. I think you saw some instances where people were airlifted to Cork. So we were open, albeit on a tiny schedule throughout the pandemic. So to give you a sense of it, during the pandemic, we had an average of 2 commercial flights per day. Wednesday was 4 of this week. Thursday was 8. Today is 10. And on Sunday it's 20. So it's ramping up very quickly. Now, so the airlines are a little bit at a loss in terms of policy. They had thought that originally the quarantine was going to be announced in terms of changes by the end of June. And that has been put off now to the 9th of July. So there's a slight clash between the amount of flight availability and the quarantine arrangement where everyone has to quarantine for 14 days. And the government has signalled they'll publish what's called a list of green routes, which is these air travel corridors where it's safe to go and approved to go on or before the 9th of July. So everyone in the industry is waiting on that.
So will the flights ramp up again then once we have our green list, you reckon?
Yeah, there's even more to go. So to give you a sense of it, the number of seats in July at Cork is 96,000, which is a lot of seats. That goes up to 175,000 in August. So
is that available or booked, Niall?
That's what's available. Bookings are still quite low because a lot of people are waiting to see what the government says in terms of where you can go and where you can't go, which is to be expected. So that has been signalled by the government. They will publish what they're calling a green list of approved destinations on or before the 9th of July. So today is the 3rd, so we only have a little bit to go. So the airlines are putting in capacity in anticipation of that. And hopefully that green list will overlay well with the list of destinations from Cork Airport.
Okay. Kevin, you launched a nice video this week, I think, of some of the procedures people can expect when they do arrive at the airport. So maybe just talk us through passenger arriving at the front door of the airport and what they can expect now.
Yes, so the passenger journey has changed somewhat. We've obviously taken a lot of safety and welfare measures at the airport over recent weeks. So at the moment, only passengers with a valid boarding pass should be entering the terminal, or if they need somebody to accompany them through the check-in procedure, they obviously can come in as well. Obviously, everyone should be now wearing a face covering coming into the terminal. They're mandatory on the flights. So from the time you enter Cork Airport till the time you reach your final destination at the other end of your journey, you should be wearing a face covering or face mask. So that's going to be the biggest difference. People
you can buy one in the terminal, Kevin, can you?
Well, we're recommending people come to the airport with sufficient numbers for the entire journey, because depending on how long people are flying or how many flights they're taking in a given day, they may need more than one. If they have forgotten one, you can purchase them from a vending machine outside the terminal or in vending machines in the terminal. But best advice is to come prepared. And certainly from Wednesday, we've been seeing 99% of passengers arriving prepared with everyone in their travel party suitably robed with a face covering. And obviously, once you get inside the terminal, then you're going to see the social and physical distance markers that we've all become very familiar with in our local supermarkets, and a lot of new plexiglass screens to protect our passengers and staff at areas like the check-in area desks, the security checkpoint, and indeed at the boarding gates. And obviously, we're sanitizing the airport on a very regular basis. All the touch points within the terminal are being cleaned and sanitized at least every 60 minutes. And that is a 24/7 operation now within the airport. So the passenger journey has changed, but the same friendly, familiar faces are there to deliver and help you on your way and give you the world-class customer service I think people have come to associate with Cork Airport.
And what about handing over things like passports and that? Everything now is done at a distance, I presume, and with the aid of technology, there's no hand-to-hand contact for anything, is there? Or what about even if you're going to be searched by security staff? Like how does that work?
So many of those points now have been minimalized or eradicated. So we encourage people to, obviously, if people can do a lot of this in advance of travel at home, they can check in online themselves or download their boarding pass onto their own mobile device, which means then they're in control of their phone at all times. They don't need to pass their phone to anyone. They'll be able to self-scan at check-in, self-scan at security, self-scan at the boarding card. And again, things like touch points, such as these self-service check-in kiosks, they're being cleaned and sanitized with newfound fogging machines. So a lot of technology has gone into making sure that the airport is absolutely safe, clean for our passengers at all time. And then obviously when you're on your return journey, you'll be in control of your own passport, presenting that to the officer. And if you are required to have that scanned, you'll find that the Garda immigration officers at passport control will be suitably gloved, and they'll be making sure that those touch points are absolutely minimized now to the very bare minimum requirement.
And just coming in on that point, Siobhan, we've changed our security processes. As you know, your bag gets x-rayed, your hand baggage, and your check-in baggage gets x-rayed as well downstairs. And then we do a metal detector test on the person to make sure they've no prohibited articles on them. So the process has been changed to minimize the amount of searches that you have to self-resolve if you alarm. So basically, if you alarm, you're just sent back to take out whatever is the offending article and present it to the officers. So they're trying to minimize the amount of searches. So let's say you have buckley shoes and you alarm, you're sent out to sort it out yourself, and you put them through the X-ray machine. If you have something in your pocket, you're sent out. So they're trying to avoid having to search for your benefit and for their benefit.
Will this slow things down a bit though, Niall?
Well, yeah, absolutely will. So the 2 meters distancing obviously takes probably in excess of 50% of our space away. And the changes to the processes will definitely slow things down. However, if you recall, most people are through security in Cork Airport in less than 5 minutes. So if 5 minutes becomes 10 minutes, it's still going to be a lot better than what you would see in airports, other airports, the bigger Heathrow, Amsterdam, and so on. So we're in a better position. We have a nice, big, spacious building. It is impeccably clean. I think anyone who uses Cork Airport knows it was clean before COVID. It's doubly clean now. We have friendly staff, so it will be a little bit slower because things have changed. If you're not crowded together in a queue, it's a little bit more slow moving. But it's going to be the best airport experience you can get in Ireland. And
what about the food element then? Is that changed much?
Our food is coming back. So for 2 flights a day, you could not pay for restaurants to operate. So therefore, we have an AMT food offering open immediately. We're expecting WH Smith to open shortly. Our exec lounge isn't open yet because there's change in food arrangements and sit down. Our bar is not open yet. But there is some food element, and as we get busier and busier, it will return.
Right. Now, it is a very worrying time for aviation. I think definitely in all our lifetimes, it's probably the most critical time for the industry. Like, how do you see long-term, how do you see it panning out? Do you think we'll ever get back to, say, 2008 levels?
So well, will we get back to 2019, which is the last unaffected year?
Right.
We get back in probably in 4 years. But this is the biggest crisis aviation has ever faced. It dwarfs September the 11th. It dwarfs, people probably don't remember, volcanic ash, where,
I sure do. Iceland.
That grounded aviation for a couple of weeks. And then there was a second outbreak and it grounded it again. So they're in the halfpenny stakes. September the 11th was big. It was a security issue. And the airport had to put in new whole baggage screening equipment on foot of that, and processes were changed around hand search, x-rays and metal detectors and everything. This is bigger. You did not see the extent of liquidations, layoffs, job effects, economic effects from those. So you have to go back to the Second World War in terms of this. So here, Cork Airport will be down 70% on traffic or more. 70% is a figure we're using. Next year, very hard to call. So how soon will demand bounce back? That's the experts don't agree on that. But you could be looking at 30% down next year again. So we'll take at least 4 years to go back to 2019 levels. But I suppose we're as well positioned as any airport. We're better positioned than most in that we've a lot of space. We have really good facilities here. They're nice, they're modern, they're clean. That's a good starting point for getting back. Ultimately, Ireland is an island nation. Realistically, how many people are going to use the ferries? That we need the airports back open for business and for economic and for social connectivity. So Cork Airport is as well positioned as any, and better positioned than most on the island. But it's down to a vaccine. And ultimately, this will get better when a vaccine is found and a vaccine is rolled out.
Okay, well, that kind of brings me nice to the next question, which I might put to both of you. The medical advice is not to travel unless you have to. So how confident would both of you, maybe you, Kevin, first, be to travel yourselves at the moment by plane?
Well, we've seen people obviously flying throughout the pandemic for essential reasons, and obviously we needed a lot of Irish people abroad to come back, flying through airports like Cork to heed Ireland's call and join the front line on our health service. Slowly, you're seeing national borders throughout Europe reopen, and as countries similar to Ireland suppress the curve, what I think you're going to see is people will be able to travel on those green lists that will be announced by government from July 9th next, where there's a similar flattening of the curve across Europe. And those safe destinations, I think, you'll be as safe going to those destinations because the curve will be as suppressed as it is here at home. So I think that will give us confidence that, other national governments, other national health services and authorities have made similar strides to suppress the virus. It hasn't gone away, and it won't be gone away, as Niall says, until a vaccine is found. But it will be as safe then to travel to those designated countries and destinations as it will be to travel between counties or any part of the 26 counties in this state.
From my perspective, Siobhan, I have 5 kids. We're definitely going on holidays in August. We obviously have to heed government advice. So government advice is only essential travel now up to 9th of July. We're waiting with bated breath to see what countries are on the green list. But if somewhere like Malta, which is available out of Cork, is on the green list, we'll be going there. If somewhere like the Canaries is on the green list, we'll be going there. I'd have no issues going to Budapest in Hungary for a weekend break. So I think common sense prevails. It's not really about the airport. I know I won't get an infection in Cork Airport. I'm happy with our sanitization, but I'm not going to go to a destination that is very dangerous. So we'll wait until the 9th of July. We'll see where the government says is safe. Common sense overrides everything, but I wouldn't endanger my 5 kids, but I'm perfectly happy to fly in August to a safe destination. So I'll be looking where the government deems safe.
Okay, now we've just had a change of administration and we have a Green Minister in charge of transport. So that's a kind of a slightly controversial appointment perhaps. So maybe Niall, first off, how do you think that'll affect the industry, having someone who is, trying to reduce carbon emissions in charge of aviation?
the government is the government and the minister is the minister, and we have to implement government policy. However, I would say that tourism is the biggest indigenous industry in Ireland. People don't realise that. Tourism overtook agriculture a number of years ago. Agriculture and food for years were Ireland's biggest industries. Now tourism is. So tourism provides jobs in all parts of Ireland. It provides regional balance, which certain industries don't, in terms of there tends to be a cluster around cities of conventional industry. So if you want to support jobs and you want to support regional development, you have to embrace tourism. And realistically, people are not going to go back to going on ferries and overnight ferries that we all did years ago to Holyhead and Rosslare Harbour. Certain people will want to travel with cars, but you have to have aviation. So the future of aviation is greener aviation, and you can do things with biofuels. For example, Ireland could become a centre of excellence in the production of biofuels, which are have a less damaging carbon footprint. You can encourage airlines to operate with cleaner planes and newer planes and cleaner plane engines. For example, all the newer planes have substantially less emissions. So people immediately default to, is it going to be taxed? And that'd be hugely damaging to Ireland's tourism industry. It'd be hugely damaging to people who need to travel for business as well. Maybe there's a way to do in terms of encouraging biofuel development, making Ireland a centre of excellence, encouraging airlines through some rebate scheme to use newer and cleaner plane engines. So there's probably a meeting of the ways there where we can still have tourism, we can still have travel, but it can be greener.
Okay. And just, you've mentioned tourism there, and I know yourself and Kevin have been very involved in promoting West Cork as a destination. You know, it's mutually beneficial for the airport and for the region. So how are you promoting it now in the face of post-pandemic world? Do you see opportunities as regards social distancing in West Cork, and maybe the Wild Atlantic Way is a great example of how you can get out there and be safe?
Well, we've just spent the last 6 weeks working with various tourism partners right across the region, including many in West Cork, many tourist attractions and hoteliers represented on the Visit Cork Regional Tourism Task Force. And those recommendations have gone to the board of Visit Cork today, and they've fed into also the Irish Tourism Industry Confederation Recovery Task Plan for Tourism, and indeed the National Tourism Recovery Plan. So I think we in Cork we're very lucky because we're at a critical hinge point for both the Wild Atlantic Way and parts of Ireland's ancient East. And certainly we've always worked in collaboration with various tourist attractions and festivals right across West Cork, including the West Cork Food Festival, which sadly has had to be deferred for this year. But it'll rebound again, I've no doubt, in a new guise and in a new phase. And we'll always be there to support that across our social media platforms, arrange meet and greets and events in the airport as a showcase to West Cork and the wider region. So I think if anything, COVID has galvanised the tourist interests in West Cork and in Greater Cork to say, you know, we're very much going to be open for business again. We need obviously overseas tourists coming in, fueling those tourist attractions, filling those hotel bedrooms, eating in those fine restaurants that West Cork is synonymous with. So we will certainly be working probably doubly hard with all of the stakeholders to make sure that that happens and that we can re-emerge from the ashes like the phoenix out of this crisis. So, as Kevin said, we're really active in tourism. It's probably not realised in the region how active we are in tourism. At 8 a.m. this morning, I attended a Visit Cork meeting, which these days was done on Zoom, chaired by Eva O'Mahony from who's the chair of Visit Cork, with the city CEO, the county CEO, the Hotel Federation, and so on. I attended an ITIC meeting, the Irish Tourism Industry Confederation, again virtually this week. They were finalising their submission to the government's tourism task force. We would invest a huge amount of money as well in marketing Cork overseas as the gateway to the Wild Atlantic Way, and we partner with Tourism Ireland in that. So a lot of the campaigns that people wouldn't see, but that happen in places like Netherlands, Northern Spain, UK, are actually co-funded by Cork Airport along with Tourism Ireland. So when Swiss visitors wander into a restaurant down in West Cork, they're coming in on Swiss Airlines, which our B2B team have landed. It has been marketed in conjunction with Tourism Ireland.
They've been hosted through the airport by friendly staff. So I think people realize we're critical to the tourism industry. They probably don't realize the amount of marketing that goes on behind the scenes to make it happen, and collaboration. I would say it has improved hugely as well, that the cooperation among stakeholders is very good at the moment. City, county, Visit Cork, Hotels Federation, restaurants, attractions, all pulling together quite well. Everyone is in this crisis together. And I would say relations are good now and improving in terms of marketing Cork. And Seamus Heaney, who people know is the CEO of Visit Cork, was talking this morning that there's a new tourism body being set up in Derry, and they've asked to come down and meet Cork to see what are we doing that's doing so well. And Dundalk Tourism has come down to meet him as well to just see what they can emulate. So when you're getting other bodies in other parts of the country coming down to see what are we doing for tourism, we're clearly doing something.
Absolutely. Now, in an ideal world, where would you go if everything was back to normal tomorrow morning as regards the destinations from Cork Airport? Niall?
Good question. Love the question. So it depends what you're doing. So if you're doing a weekend break, London, pick up a show, Paris, all the food in Paris, all the things to do. If you were looking for a family destination, Canaries, hard to beat Malaga. You know, you can do so much in Spain. You can hit the beaches, you can go up the Granada mountains, and there's loads and loads of good towns. Probably Malta is underrated. We have Dubrovnik in Croatia as well, again, as an alternative. So it depends. Budapest is a great weekend destination. So it depends what you're trying to do. I would separate out the weekendy places, the Amsterdams, the Paris, the Londons, from the family breaks, which is going to be involve a beach. There's alternatives if people don't want a beach. There's centre parks, obviously centre parks in Longford if you want to go staycation, but there's centre parks in Holland, so you can fly into Netherlands on our KLM or on our Aer Lingus service and take that, and you can have a different type of family break that doesn't involve the beaches. Kevin, over to you. What do you think?
Well, I think you might have covered every destination from Cork there, Niall, so I don't know what's left for Kevin.
Well, I had been looking with a young family of heading to just south of Barcelona to one of the campsites this year, but sadly that's not an option. And the other thing I was going to do later in the year was I was going to head to Japan, but that event has been postponed. But the beauty now with airlines like KLM, Air France and Swiss is that you can do long haul out of Cork over Heathrow, Amsterdam, Paris or Zurich. And that opens up over 500 destinations in addition to the 50 we normally would have had pre-COVID. So I think there's a mixture there of both the city breaks, your annual holiday, your additional holiday, and not forgetting also, obviously, a lot of people want to visit and revisit family and friends in the UK and across Europe after this. So all of those destinations are slowly but surely coming back on the radar as the airlines ramp up their operations during July, August and into September.
Okay, and I don't think either of you had much downtime, but if you did have any, unlike the rest of us who had plenty, what were you doing? Were you watching Contagion and films about airports, or were you catching up on?
Unfortunately, we're a commercial organisation. We get no grants, so people have this perception that sort of like the bills are paid by some arm of the state. So we're a fully commercial organisation. We get no grants, money, and our turnover is 34 million per annum. Our turnover plummeted 99% during the day the pandemic broke, and since all of our contracts with airlines were problematic because all of the arrangements were changed. All of our contracts with our concessionaires, our food and beverage, our retail concessionaires were problematic in terms of the world had just turned upside down and people are talking force majeure. And we obviously had to arrange TWSS, the support scheme for staff. So this badge, it makes you an essential worker. So I was in, unfortunately, every single day. I didn't have any working from home. I didn't have any downtime at all. It just turned our business upside down in terms of the hotel. We were like a restaurant or a pub that was closed overnight. The cash flow was turned off. And we had to just really, we're in the starting again. Somebody said to me during the week, it feels like a startup phase, not in terms of like just going down and going back to the way you were. It's like starting a new company again. So we had to adapt through all that, all the safety measures, all the changes, all the staffing arrangements. Fortunately, we had to let a number of staff go, and we have a redundancy scheme open at the moment. So it has been, I would say, Kevin, a very challenging and traumatic time over the last couple of months. What's your views, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, I think, certainly the management team have been working 7 days a week throughout this, and even though technically we're on a 4-day week, we're still working consistently through the 7 days. The one thing I have done, which I haven't done probably since my leaving cert, is I've gone back to doing a bit of creative writing. Every day throughout the lockdown, Niall and I meet up virtually after 6 o'clock every day, and we've been writing a daily digest for all our staff. We get emailed out before 8 a.m. every day, so there's a bit of operational updates on what's happening or not happening at the airport, as was the case, some industry news and some well-being advice as well for staff. So particularly on the well-being side, that's creative writing that I wouldn't have done for a long time, and I've actually enjoyed it. It's become fondly known in my house at this stage as the Daily Bugle, and next Tuesday actually will mark the 100th edition of the Daily Bugle. So again, I suppose it's a talent and a skill that lay dormant for a long time and probably wouldn't have re-emerged. So there is a little glimmer of hope that emanates out of this whole coronavirus.
You might have a second career there in the offing, Kevin, if everything goes belly up.
There could be a good book in it yet.
Sounds like it.
I found, Siobhan, is that you need something to get your head out of the constant COVID stuff. So I hadn't fished since I was a kid. I used to love fishing when I was a kid, and I hadn't fished for probably 25 years. And there was a fishing rod in the shed. And fishing is one of those things, a bit like golf or rugby or one of those things that if you get back into it, it becomes addictive. So I found myself fishing off the rocks from James's Fort in Kinsale many an evening, and down in Sandy Cove as well. And it's just brilliant to catch a couple of mackerel, a couple of pollock, and get your head out of the coronavirus and peace and quiet of the waters. Sort of a view a bit like is on the wall behind. There's nothing like it. Fabulous,
absolutely. Well, you're going to be fishing now for a few more clients, I think, over the next few weeks with the airline. So best of luck, both of you, with the future at Cork Airport. And thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this week.
Now, this week's music choice comes from the West Cork-based COVID Collective. It's made up of James Downing and Keith Hendricks of The Shrugs, and they bring along different friends to join them on great cover versions. This is their 6th video now during the COVID lockdown, and it's a wonderful version of John Martin's May You Never, and it also features Ben Nichols from Cornish singing group the Bass Cassels, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you for listening to the Southern Star Coronavirus podcast. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our podcast, which is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Acast, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
May